You guys, what's up? It's me, Justin, and today we are going to begin a 4-week conversation, a collection of conversations, if you will, around the idea of a fine line. A fine line separates things that are good from things that are great. A fine line can also separate things that are good from things that aren't so great. A few weeks ago, my son, he said he wanted a monster truck. So we went to Amazon and we began to look for monster trucks within his price range. And we found one, and it was way below the price range. We were like, this is great. It looks cool and it's cheap. This is outstanding. There is the fine line. You see, it was cheap. We got it home, and within, 10 minutes, the thing was broken. Imagine trying to tell a 3-year-old, hey bud, this new toy that you are so excited about, thing that you've been waiting for, it's broken. It looked good, but there was a fine line between good and not so good. Just a question I want to ask you. How often do we find ourselves in situations where our relationships teeter-totter on this fine line? See, we look at relationships and we say, hey, this relationship is good, but I have one foot in the not so good. Or this relationship could be great, but I've got one foot stuck in the good. Jim Collins is an incredible author, and he writes that the enemy of great is good. And I believe that God actually desires for you and me to not just settle for good enough, but rather he wants us to experience great relationships. But the world around us is constantly saying, hey, settle for what's cheaper. Go ahead and accept the cheap imitation that is maybe a little more accessible. A lot of times we think, hey, what does the Bible have to say about relationships today? Because, in today's day and age, relationships, they're just more complicated. Right? Like back when the Bible was written, there wasn't online dating, which is not a bad thing. That's how I met my wife, but that wasn't a thing. There wasn't social media. People weren't meeting each other for the very first time online and then saying, wait, hold on, you're not the person I thought you were. So let's see, what does the Bible have to say about our relationships, specifically when it comes to how we can tread that fine line? One of my favorite books to turn to is the book of Psalms, because it literally covers every emotion. And in Psalm 101, David is writing, and here's what he says in verse 3. I will not look with approval on anything that is vile. Whoa, bro, what do you mean? In other translations, it says, I will not set worthless things before my eyes. I will not put things of devalue in front of me. I will not accept a lesser quality substitute. So let's look at one of, actually, my favorite relationships in the Old Testament. It's a relationship between a dude named Samson and a chick named Delilah. No, not the song, Hey There, Delilah. Don't go there. I know that song is now playing in your head. Like, don't fight the risk to go there right now. Fight the risk to hit pause and to go watch the video. Check in here for just a little bit longer. You see, Samson, he had this incredible opportunity, right? God said, hey, there are things about you that the world needs. But then he goes and he meets this girl. And it's interesting because the moment she catches his eye, he's like, I gotta have her. I don't know her, but I gotta have her. And this is what it says in Judges 14, verses 1 through 4. Samson went down to Timnah. I can't even say that. He went to a city that starts with Tim and ends with Nah. Anyway, and saw there a young Philistine woman. Now let's pause it real quick. The importance is this. See, she's a Philistine, which means she's not of similar mind to him. Right? She has a completely different viewpoint on the things that matter, like who is God. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in, the city Tim and Dinah. Now give her for me as my wife. His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? In other words, whoa, bro. You're looking in a place that maybe you shouldn't be looking. You're accepting a less than suitable quality. You're picking the cheap monster truck off Amazon. You're allowing yourself to fall into the trap that good is good enough. But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. Man. He didn't want to listen to his parents. Now, I'm not saying that your parents are the ones that should pick your future spouse, but I'm saying, hey, your parents have some wisdom, and so when you present something to them and they're like, whoa, time out, let's reconsider. Hey, consider what they have to say. Because see, here's the thing. First impressions and initial appearances, that word, are oftentimes surface level. Let me say that again. Initial impressions and first time appearance, it's often surface. We don't know anything except for what's above the water. When the Titanic was out in the water, cruising along, doing its thing, it saw an iceberg, and the iceberg was just sticking out the water a little bit, no big deal, but there was something underneath that they weren't aware of. See, when we see this story of Samson and Delilah, now all I want to say is, hey there, Delilah. ADD, bring it back, Justin. When we see this story of Samson and Delilah, we see that first appearance and that initial interaction can be attractive, but it stays surface. And when we go off of simply what we see, we can oftentimes find ourselves getting in trouble. And it's not just Samson and Delilah that find themselves in trouble. In fact, it's oftentimes you and me. When we stick to the surface, we find ourselves in trouble. And that's not just in dating relationships. Guys, that's with friendships, that's with family. When we choose not to go deeper with someone, then we choose to wade in the water and to have 1 foot in the good and 1 foot in the unknown. And God is saying, I want more for you. I want you to step across the fine line into the great things that He has planned for you. See, when we look at a deeper level, then we discover more about that person. But think about this for a minute. When Samson saw what he wanted, he chased after it. And similarly, when we see something and we're like, oh, that looks great, we just go. And then we find ourselves, in many cases, settling for a cheap substitute to greatness. Good is the enemy of great. Here's what I want you to take away. If nothing else sticks, I want this to be the thing that you write on your mirror, take notes, jot down, keep in front of you. What you consider will be what you consume. What you consider, what you put before your face will ultimately be the thing that you consume. So what does this mean for you and I? Well, Proverbs was written by a guy named Solomon. He was considered to be the wisest man who ever lived outside of Jesus. God asked him one time, hey, what do you want? Anything you ask for, I will give you. And he said, give me wisdom. Wisdom is what we need. Now more than ever. We're living in a space where yesterday is different than today. And we're looking at things and we say, how do I respond to what's going on in my world. It seems like it's ever evolving, ever changing. And so here's what Solomon says. He gives this incredible advice. He says this in Solomon 7, verses 1, 2, and 3. My son, my daughter, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands and you will live. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your finger. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Wow. He says, hey guys, write down these things so that you know them. What you put in front of you will be what you consume. And if you put things in front of you that are just good enough, you will consume what is just good enough. Some of you guys know that I've been on this journey to try to lose a little bit of weight. And when I put in front of me cookies and chips and cheeseburgers, I consume it. And the result is just okay. But when I am intentional about the food I put in front of me, I consume the things that my body needs. The very same thing goes for what we look at. See, anything that we treat as valuable cannot be left vulnerable. Ooh, write that one down too. Anything that we consider valuable cannot be left vulnerable. We have to protect the things that we say are important. So, maybe what you need to do right now is to have a little heart check. Are you considering your own relationships as valuable? And if they are, which I think they are, well, are you leaving them vulnerable? Let's start with your mind. See, your mind, man, it can either lead you to some good places or it can lead you to some dark places. And what you put in front of your eyes ultimately fills your mind with the things that bounce around like crazy. See, what we put in front of our eyes, we will eventually consume. What we look at, we will eventually chase after. Samson, he saw a woman in front of him that in any other day would have been like, hey, she doesn't believe what I believe. She might lead me down the wrong path. I'm not going to go for it. But on that day, he did not guard his heart. He did not guard his eyes. And in doing so, he wandered. He crossed that fine line. So, what are some guards that we can put on our eyes? What are some things that we can put, some filters that we can look at? Well, there are filters you can put on your phone and on your computer to prevent you from seeing things. My son, he's all about YouTube lately. And when he watches YouTube, sometimes videos will pop up that we don't want him to see. So we actually change the parental controls so that we can monitor what he sees. We can make sure that what he consumes isn't going to fill his head with things that we don't want there. Maybe for some of you, you're like, hey, you know what? I actually need some stricter guidelines on what I'm choosing to and not to watch. Maybe you're like, hey, listen, there are some shows that my friends are choosing to watch. Some YouTube accounts that I have been exposed to, but I don't actually think I want to watch those anymore, because if I do, well, then I'm going to be exposed to things that are going to get me to cross the line. Or maybe the next best step for you is accountability. Man, a lot of us hate that word. But accountability is actually going to maybe save you from trailing off down a path you don't want to go on. That's why we spend so much of our time talking about life groups. Being in a group of people your age who think and see the same things you do and can actually say, hey, time out. Whoa. Flag on the play. What you doing? Why are you going there? Why are you looking at that? Why are you engaging in those messages? Why are you letting that person slip into your DMs and then continue the conversation? We need accountability. So friends, my challenge to you is this: guard your eyes. I think for many of us, we're putting worthless things in front of our eyes, and as a result, we're seeing bad fruit come out. So what do? How do we move forward today? Step 1, surrender your eyes to the Lord. God, I want to see what you see. I want to see what you are putting in front of me. And the second thing is, commit to not letting anything worthless or unclean come before your eyes. Guys, if we can do that, we will see a generation change. We will see a generation change our world. But to change a world, you first have to start by changing a life. Let's start with yours and go from there. Until next time, peace.